I'm going to formally introduce you to Greg, just for those that don't know who he is. But Greg loves running. He likes to run a long way, and the madness, as he tells us, started in 2007 when, at the age of 40, he decided to pursue a new hobby as an outlet. Started off as innocent 1 kilometre runs to the local park and back, and then ended up in half marathons, and then ultra marathons. Taking crazy to a whole nother level, he joined us in Thailand in 2018 and took on the 800 kilometre bike ride that you're all doing at the moment. He took that on and ran. So Pete and Greg will have a chat today just about that experience and what that looked like from a runner's perspective versus the cycling perspective. There's certainly there's no early days off the bike, or early days as we do off the bike. It's a pretty intense strategy when you decide to run it. So here to chat is Pete, and welcome Greg.
Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, CT. Great to have you back joining us, Greg. And for those who are on the 7 o'clock sessions, you would have seen that Tomo had a chat with Greg. But knowing Greg and what he's doing and what he's done, I just thought it was a great value that he joined the midday session so we could explore a couple of things in a bit more detail. I wanted to talk about the run through Thailand in 2018 and also from my vision of it and my experience of it from the seat of the bike as you ran. And then I also want to break down the ultra trail running a bit further and then hear about what you're doing and how you can help people who are looking to embrace something like that. But before we get started, this is a road you might be familiar with, Greg. This is into day 3 on the road in Thailand. Now, those that were on the call this morning, you might notice that it's a pretty short length that we ride. Yesterday, if you were riding, we finished up at the top of a temple. And then this is day 3 and we actually ride down very, very fast from the temple. And then it's a cruise to lunch. And lunch is the infamous pasta and pizza day. And then we have the afternoon off. And then we have the alternate of pasta or burgers for dinner that night. So what you'll see on the footage today is you'll see what it looks like to ride forwards. You'll see what it looks like in your rear vision mirror, but it's a short day, this leg that we're going to ride now. So that's what you'll see. So Greg, is there anything here that looks a bit familiar to you?
It does, Peter. Obviously, you get very much the sense and the vibe and the feel of it. Obviously, not necessarily all the smells and odors that rural Thailand has to offer. There's a good friend, the dog wandering across, very, very typical. Although I'm not sure about this pizza and hamburger business. I don't remember any of that. I think it was afternoon tea by the time I got to your lunch stop.
Yeah, mate. Well, you missed out on plenty of good meals because you're out on the road. And I remember a number of times where I might have been having a post-dinner beer and we cheered you in to the end of your day. But before that, I just wanted to go back. You talk about CT spoken about, why you took up running or how that occurred. I guess just quickly for the crew who haven't heard you speak in the 7 a.m. session, how quickly and what was it that took you from running, a couple of Ks through the half, through the full, and then into the ultras and the crazy distances beyond?
I think first of all, like a number of people, probably in their 30s, uh, tending to have children, family, life, all those sorts of things is very much, when you have young children, your main focus. For me, I'd played sport, competitive sport, at a reasonably high and competitive level till probably mid-20s. Family became certainly the priority, with younger children through my 30s, and suburbia and renovating homes and those things. And as probably as I got towards 40, and it wasn't so much the 40 milestone, I think it was perhaps a reflection that I'd got stuck in a rut. Certainly my wife Julie was keen for me to get out and do other things. And I was probably not in the best place.
Was that, mate, because you were sick of you being around house, around her feet, and
Yeah,
it was more? This was for Julie, not for you. Is that what we're hearing?
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I think for me, I actually probably went into a bit of a dark place, being honest.
Yep.
And to get out and sort of break that rut, it was suggested to me, why you need to do something. One of those things was, well, I love sport. Do I get back into that? I was traveling a lot for work, so I couldn't commit to team sports, or I just couldn't commit to things. And someone said to me, why don't you take up running? And I laughed, and I actually laughed at them. And then a few weeks later, I went, well, actually, I can probably do that. So I just went for literally a 1 kilometre run to the park, 1 kilometre back. I don't know how quick or slow I was, but thought that was pretty cool. Within a couple of weeks, I went, I'll do city to surf, and I was doing probably at night comfortably 15, 16 Ks. I actually got ill and didn't do the city to surf, but went, I've trained, so hey, I'll have a crack at a half. Did the half marathon straight after that. And I went, that was pretty cool. My feet have never hurt so much from that. Then I went, I'd always wanted to have a go at a marathon. I don't know why. It was just one of those lofty things like, oh, that's pretty cool. So I set myself and did one. And as you start to do events, you enjoy them. And then, straight after it, you're pretty tired. And the next day you're looking for the next one. From there, our good friend Mickey Campbell, who you mentioned at the start of the call, he'd done a couple of these other things where we stayed out all night. Up in the Blue Mountains and other places. I remember him saying he'd done one that was 18 hours, and I thought that was nuts. Climbing up ladders, all these things. I went, actually, I'll have a crack. So I had a crack at that. I think I enjoyed the first half, didn't like the second half. The next day was online looking for the next one. And from there, I just kept going. So that was in about a 12 to 18 month period. And for me, it was just, part of it might be being a country boy, Peter. I found it was certainly a release from city and corporate life. It was certainly different from suburbia, and understanding that I was doing it with the blessing of my wife and family, to get out there, and just the space. I think the clarity I got out in the forest, the calmness, and that became my church. So from that perspective, I just like doing the distance. And if that's road, great. If it's in the trail, wonderful.
And you spoke about that you were in a bit of a dark place when you took it up. Did you find the solitude on the trails and in these, longer runs, was that something that was good for the place that you're in, the time in your head? But was it the trail running, was that helping? Was it? I'm assuming it was. You wouldn't have, you caught up. But tell me about that. How did that help?
It was helping a lot, Peter. I don't think it was the solitude per se. I think it was perhaps the mind space it creates. And people often say, do you listen to music? Don't you get bored? Well, actually, it's the thinking time. It's the time to have your own thoughts. It's the same with relaxing with a cup of tea, or perhaps a book, or just drifting away consciously. So it enables you go through over, I don't know, if you're out for a 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour run in the forest, you go through lots of things, which is taking in the landscape around you. Just the sheer beauty, from the vista to, just a bird flying past. You are conscious of your technique. So that brings you back and centers you. You'll be thinking about work. And it's amazing how often you get a great idea for something at work, or a problem or solution comes to hand, or an idea. You're not searching for ideas, but it's just that I think it's that the mind space that it creates is good, and that at times you do want to run on your own, and occasionally you go, I need to see some people. I've been on my own for a bit too long.
Yeah, Greg, I think that the time that we're in right now with COVID, there's lots of people who have had some really significant disruption to their life with loss of jobs, retrenchments, and what that can mean for, people who are on the edge with mortgages and all of that. And, we've got good support at the moment with JobKeeper and different things that's helping us. But there's a lot of tough times to come, and people will find themselves potentially in that rut. Is it the case that doing something like what you did with the running just gave you something to channel the energy and I guess just do something that helped provide the medicinal relief from the place that you're in?
I think so, Peter. It's certainly, I'm indeed also caught up in some of those challenges with, some of my work being slowed and put on hold, which is not good. That's how it is, but I've been able to deal with that quite calmly. And I think one of the elements about getting out onto the trails and the running is you still certainly get a sense of self because you're achieving something. And it's not necessarily that you're always racing, by the way. It's just that you had a good run. You saw great things. You saw a nice part of the forest today. They are small things. It grounds you and it connects you. It's also something different from being on a computer all day, being in suburbia all day, and it brings you back to some of those small pleasures in life, which are actually very important. But again, that headspace. I mentioned a little bit earlier about calmness and clarity, and I find those things certainly very much work for me from a running perspective. So while a lot of people question, why do you go so far and isn't it boring? Well, actually, I come back calm, relaxed, peaceful, and I've had a good time out. For other people do different things for that. For me, that works. So from that perspective, very, very health-wise, a good thing.
And Greg, when you're running on the trails and not competing or not in an organised race, if you're just out running the trails, are you someone that's looking at uploading, focusing on data and times, or is it something that that's not something that you're caught up in?
I'll be honest. If I'm just out running the trails, you're conscious of the time to a degree, and that might be because you want to be home by late morning for something, or by lunch, or recently up in the Blue Mountains, we've been running through parts of the mountains and conscious that we had to make a train connection. Otherwise, you miss it. It's an hour later. So you're conscious of that. But because the terrain is so variable, you can't compare it to road, and it depends on the elevation and the climb. So if you are literally going up a track, which is probably a 400-meter climb, and you're almost scrambling up that track, your pace is irrelevant as long as you get there safely. Similarly, going down a gorge, one of the key things always is about being safe. If you can do it quickly, great. But the main thing is enjoy it. Again, if there's a nice, good, flat bit of trail that's great running, you might motor through there. But then you'll come to the edge or again, top of a valley and spend 10 minutes sitting there having a drink with your legs hanging over the edge, looking at the scenery. How special is this? How lucky am I to be an hour from Sydney and I've got this at my doorstep? Isn't life good?
Greg, it seems like that Beyond the 42 is something that changes the way that people run, the purpose behind it. And if you're running a half or running a full marathon on the road, it's very much, I'd suggest for a lot of people, about the time. You have all your water stations. It's just you and your watch, and away you go. But Beyond the 42, it completely changes, doesn't it? As soon as you're off the road, Then you're carrying a heap of gear. The aid stations are completely different, and it's an entirely different experience. And what is it for you that's drawn you to trail running as opposed to the marathon runs? And can you talk to us about the difference in competing and participating in those two different types of events?
Oh. I suppose the first thing, Peter, with marathons are still very satisfying, and yes, it is about generally about the time, unless you are helping someone. One of the most, like I've run Boston, very satisfying. I've run reasonably quick times, very satisfying. A couple of years ago, a couple of us in teams pushed some young guys who had cerebral palsy in the city marathon. That was one of the most satisfying things I've ever done. Yeah, the time was sort of important, but the main thing was, again, about the experience. But interesting with marathons, people use the phrase, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Well, actually, for most marathon runners, it's a sprint. You are sprinting.
Yeah.
You're sprinting for 42K. So the first thing is you are racing and you are very competitive. You will look out for other runners, but you're racing one-on-one. When it gets to the trail event, first of all, it is certainly a different experience because you're going long. Now that means you need to have your legs good at 90K, at 100K, at 150K. So if you think of the school cross country where all the kids hike off real quick, you're not going to be very good at 2 p.m., 6 p.m., 8 p.m. and midnight. So it's about managing your body, but you're in for a long day. And interestingly, when I train, I feel my body at about 10K almost like settle down and go, okay, we're in for a long day here. I think the piece with the trails is, first of all, you learn so much about yourself. You need to be pushing yourself, but you also need to be calm. You need to be able to concentrate because the terrain changes. You need to make sure you're lifting your feet all the time so you're not tripping over tree roots. You want to look and see what's around you, but you can't relax because as soon as you relax, the trail has a way of putting a rock there or a tree stump or something else to trip on to bring you back to reality and make you respect it. The aid stations give you a real sense of humility. You have people who will stay there for hours and help everybody who comes through.
Yeah.
If you meet a runner on the trail, you're helping each other. Everybody wants to finish. You'll tend to talk to them, might be for 2 minutes, and you run past them or they run past you. But there is very much a sense of everybody is doing something together, and there's a real sense of help each other. So you get the ultra running community is not a massive community, although it's grown a lot over the last few years. But there are a lot of good people, and everyone is about helping each other to get there. And again, the satisfaction you get out of competing in an event is great. It's like the bling is nice, but it's actually more about what you're capable of. And you've gone, well, actually, I've been capable of pretty much fending for myself in the bush for the best part of a day or a day and a half. And once every couple of hours, I've got to see 3 people who have come with me for the weekend, who will look after me for about 8 minutes, take perfect care of me as and there's so much love that goes with that, then I'm gone. Then then I'll hang around for another 3 or 4 hours. And for people to also to give up that time for you is wonderful. Yet it's almost a case of every time you go to an event, they ask, can we come too? So pulling that back around, Peter, marathon is very much often about the time. While you're conscious of the time on the trail, it is much more about what you get to see. It is what you get to experience. And there is also generally a lot more humility, and you see a lot more of the human element with people on the trail.
Greg, we spoke with a mate of yours, Dave Croniti, on Saturday, and Dave did his marathon best time in Berlin at 2:17:57, and I think it's one of those things you can't appreciate that by looking at the numbers, and the best way to appreciate it is to go out and run as fast as you can for a kilometre and see how you're short of Dave's time, and then realise that he holds that pace for 42 Ks. And, you know, that's an absolute sprint and something that's hard to get your head around, isn't it?
It is. And it is really sprinting, but it also reflects to get to that level. And Dave is, you know, he's very close to those Commonwealth Games qualifying time and all those sorts of things. You know, and if Dave has a bad race, he's a 220 or 225, you know, whereas other of us those sorts of times. But it reflects he's put in the work.
Yeah. And like, you look at what he's doing like 200 Ks a week average, which is 10,000 Ks a year running. And I said to him when I spoke to him, I thought I was doing really well when I almost got 10,000 Ks in a year on a bike. And it's a massive amount of time too, isn't it? Like, and, you know, outside of COVID and outside of this challenge you're doing now, what are you running distances on a weekly basis?
Well, there's a couple of elements. One of those is the time. And again, if you're training for races, normally you're training for 1 or 2 big events a year, and you'll build up with those progressively. Sometimes you might do other ones. While I'm running 800 Ks now, most of that on the treadmill, I did a 160K event the week before, which was perhaps not necessarily the smartest thing. But look, the distances tend to vary. You do also have to manage your body. Like for me, I'm usually doing sort of like around, I like to do 90 to 110K a week, which makes me seem quite poor by David's standards. And David is really working hard on those. From a time-wise, I'm normally doing it early in the morning. I'm sort of doing 4:30 till 6:30 a.m. or maybe 5 till 7. And then on the weekend, it'll be the same times, just might be a little bit longer on the Saturday and the Sunday. Now, the reasons for that are, first of all, it doesn't take up too much time away from family and normal life, because you have to be conscious of those commitments. And ideally, you want to build your training plan around your life, not your life around your training plan. So I tend to do my stuff then. Also, the early morning is peaceful. I find it quiet. The city is still asleep. If you're out on the trails, you get that brisk, you know, country type element. And then the sun coming up and the place starting to come to life. It also is that little bit cooler when you're in summer. So that time period sort of works for me, and it gets back to perhaps that peacefulness. In many ways, it reminds me of being a kid on my grandparents' farm in the early morning, milking cows and things. It's just as the light comes and the mist and that sort of stuff. But so you have to be conscious of the time commitment, and that sometimes means you have to manage your goals about what's realistic. If you have a phenomenal amount on, it's quite challenging. I remember an event a couple of years ago, the 100K in the Blue Mountains, where I went up on the Friday afternoon and registered, drove back to Sydney, went to a black tie ball till about 1:30 in the morning, got home, had about an hour and a half sleep, packed, got picked up by a guy we were talking about earlier on the call, and up we went to the Blue Mountains for the day. I had to be realistic. I wasn't going to set world records that day. Interestingly, I was fantastic till 90K, and then had a last 10K that nearly killed me, but I had no sleep for a couple of days and was low on fuel. So those things, but you just balance it. As long as you need to stay smart, need to be conscious of where you're at and what you're capable of. So Peter, you're 10,000K on the bike. If you were just starting on the bike, that'd be a lot for you to achieve. Given you've done a fair bit, that's within the realms of possibility.
Yeah, sure. And it's a point that I wanted to explore with you, and then in a minute I want to talk about the Thailand ride in a bit more depth. But one of the things I'm really interested in is listening to some of the amazing guests that we've had talk to us. And you know, this morning we had a great chat with Aidan Grimes, who's led 124 crossings across Kokoda. You know, we spoke yesterday with Cam Mostyn, who was part of the 4-man crew that rode 4,600 kilometres. We've spoken to Dave Creniti, spoke to Lucy Bartholomew, and one of the things that I'm really interested in hearing is the balance between a dignified did not finish and pushing something that is you might finish, but is it the best thing? And, you know, because this is, people listening to this, there's lessons in life as to, you know, as when is it the right time to go hard and put it all in, but also knowing when's a smart time to stop and, you know, rather than continuing to pour good money, good energy, good time into something that, you know, is not your day.
There's a very much a mixed response to that, Peter. I think on the start line, everyone has the view of go hard or go home.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily their race plan, but that's what they're telling everybody else. Again, it's about being smart. Occasionally you take on challenges which you think are too big, but that's also what stretches you and what you learn from. When it gets to events and when is the time to pull out, there's a couple of factors there. For me, one of those is around where are you mentally. I've not pulled out of an event, so I can have the drive to go on. And some people just sometimes lose the enthusiasm, but it's important to be able to keep going. And if you're struggling, it's just go to the next tree, go to the next point, go on the top of the next ridge. So you're always buying it off in smaller chunks. And then by the time you realize you've done an extra 10 or 15K and you still feel the same. So you haven't had to pull out. That's one element. I've only had one do not finish, and that was medical reasons at about 40K, and I was passing a lot of blood at the time. That wasn't so good. That was the right.
That's a fair start.
It was the right and smart thing to pull out. Interestingly, within about half an hour of pulling out, I had about 10 missed calls from people, A, seeing how I was and making sure I was okay, and B, all laughing because I pulled out. And though, again, serious runners, and it's the same thing. Everyone at some time probably has something which doesn't quite go their way, but it's about being smart. There's a difference between hurt or pain and something that's really hurt. So if you'll have pain, you'll always have pain, you just deal with it and move on. And that was one thing I learned, again, reinforced in the 800K Thailand run. But if you've really damaged or broken something, it's smarter to pull out and get the right care. But if it's a mental issue, you try to push on, because really your body's still there, keep going. And you just need to have that resilience and perseverance. And if you take bite-sized chunks, you certainly get there. And being very conscious of that with the 800K ride and the scenery here. If you're riding that route, you're very much conscious of just this bend now and what might be up ahead or around the corner. Not thinking of the destination. It's too far away. You can't fathom that. You just have to deal with what's in front of you.
Yeah, we spoke with, as I said, Lucy, I think that was Monday at lunchtime, and she talked about a race that meant a lot for her, and it was running France to Italy, and was on the back of having won the UTA 100K and this expectation, and she got there and said it just wasn't her day, and it took her to the 60K mark before she found her mojo and felt strong, and she'd been throwing up and went on and came third in that race. And it's just a really interesting thing, isn't it, for us to, physically it's in you. So especially when we're talking to people like you guys who are these, elite athletes who have done the training, that you've got it within you, that it really does come down to that mental strength.
It certainly does, Peter. And I think one of the, I know there's something that stands out for me is some years ago there's a race called Coast to Kosciuszko. And I remember one of the winners of that talking one time, and oftentimes some of the elite athletes, if it's getting a bit hard or they don't think they're going to win, they pull out.
Yeah.
Whether that's mental or whether that's they don't want to be embarrassed about a poor finish, not quite sure. But I remember that person talking about how much respect they had for the people that were still out there hours later, who aren't professional, who are scratched together every dollar to go into this, and they grind it out, and they'll be grinding it out over hours, a half a day or more, and getting through. And the respect that those people earn, and often an elite athlete who struggles but drops right back and still gets through it, gets an amazing amount of kudos and respect, because they actually toughed it out and finished it rather than going, well, it's not my day, I'll pull out. So one of the key is to be able to take it a bite at a time, and things will come good. It may take some time. That can be an hour, half an hour. It can just be something, a small little something gives you a lift. It could even be a junction or a checkpoint, and you see someone you weren't expecting to see who just says, "Hey, good to see you, lift, let's go." And all of a sudden you come to life and you have a buzz and you're humming again for an hour or two. It just lifts you. It's amazing, the small things that have an impact.
It is, isn't it? You know, it can be such a mental part, especially at the end. And I was running the Tarawera 50K this year and got to the last aid station. And on my watch, I had 7K to go and was very much looking forward to that. And got there, and, you know, there's a sign that says, yeah, congratulations, only 11K to go. And it was like it broke me, you know, like going, no, my watch says 7, you know, and it is something. I asked Cam, what was it for him that when he, you know, because they were out there for 35 days, and I said, what was it that lifted you when you were down? Was it some type of food? Was it some type of drink? Was it a mantra? Was it a song? What was it that lifts you up? And you've spoken about that a little bit with, you know, just looking forward to the next, you know, person that's sitting there to tell you to turn left and the next aid station. But is there something else that you do that you might take into your body or so forth that you know is your go-to when you're doing it really hard?
I don't know if there's any magic answer to that, Peter. It is different things. It can be that just, I know once or twice my support crew turned up with a Coke Slurpee, you know?
Yeah.
That was at the end of a very long day with another day ahead. And that was just the most exciting thing that had happened to me in years. You know, it was just wonderful. Small things lift you, little treats like that. In Thailand, doing this run, and even though some of them once now, it can be a villager coming out and just waving at you. Little things like that will lift you and take you on. Messages. There was one night on the ride, but I think it was probably the third night in, and this is sort of a combination of getting on with it and resilience, but also how things lift you. And it was dark. My feet were a mess, had really bad blisters. What we're going to do? So you do the standard thing you do with blisters. You cut them and you tape them. And I didn't have one. I had about 6 or 7. The first 100 meters in a pair of shoes was extremely painful. Taking them off was extremely painful. And I had some advice. Julie rang home to a good friend who'd done some of these, and he'd done a run across the Sahara and had really bad feet. And the message was, just put up with it. And that changed my whole demeanor. I went from, this really hurts, to, I just have to put up with it. And from that moment on, everything was fine, even though I had blisters galore. It's just sometimes how it goes. But little things drive you. Sometimes it can be a song, a mantra. I've done a race where I wanted to get home before the pub shut. So that drove me. I had a mantra in my head: home before the pub shut, home safely, home before the pub shut. That went through my head for about 3 hours. Just little things. And it's often even just meeting someone on the trail. I mentioned it's not a massive community, and all of a sudden you come across someone you're running with you haven't seen for a year or two, but it's like picking up old times, you know, and it's they're going through the same thing, the same ups and downs, and those things lift you.
Yeah. You spoke about it not being a big community, but it's certainly growing with those like UTA sells out in hours now, and there's a real growth in trail running. But I'll come back to that because I just want to visit the Thailand ride, a run that we keep talking about. And you first rode the Thailand ride, 800 Ks, 8 days in 2011. And then you came back in 2018 and you ran the distance. And you knew what you were in for because you'd ridden the roads. Is that something that helped or hindered?
And Peter, I also went back in 2015 because my daughter did the ride. Although I only saw it at the start and very much at the finish, but I still got to enjoy Thailand in between. It's very interesting how, first of all, I knew the roads were flat. Generically, that's good. I knew there were challenges. I knew there were dogs. There'd be wildlife. There'd be lots of different things. A lot of pimp my ride trucks and buses and all the whole experience Thailand has to offer. You would get to see highways being constructed like this and little dirt roads, villages with fishing boats being built. Amazing things. So I knew what to expect. I'm not sure my support crew knew fully what to expect. So from that perspective, yes, I had a pretty good idea. Obviously, the challenge is going at a different pace and having to deal with the heat. So the days were much longer. When I was starting to think about where that good lunch stop was, you guys were already done and in your hotel, and I still had 4, 5, 6 hours plus very much ahead of me, and there's no way that place was still open for lunch. Then also, you slightly change the route each year for various reasons. So I know I think it was the second last day I had in my mind. I remember there was a lot of highway on it, a couple of climbs, not bad, just long, slow ones. I had that very much in my mind, but the route had changed a little bit over those years, and then went up and around a dam, and I hadn't prepared for that mentally. I prepared for freeway, and here I was through rubber plantations and on a different bitumen undulating road in the heat, and that played with my mind a little bit. So things don't always go as you expect, but you just have to adapt, and you have to take in what's in front of you. So it is amazing though how you still remember little things, and you may not have been somewhere for 3, 5, 8 years. You still remember the shop on the corner. You still remember going through this rubber plantation. You still remember those racks of drying fish beside the beach. It's funny how small things still work for you.
Greg, it was, we obviously talked a lot in the lead up to what you're going to do. And, I've ridden 30 times in Thailand now with so many wonderful people across the country. So if there's anyone that knew what you were about to do, it was me. But I've got to tell you, it was even having ridden the roads and know the roads, and I was still blown away, and I didn't appreciate what you were doing until I rode past you. And you could feel it in the group that at different times you're going, it's hot, it's hard, and then we ride past you, and I don't think you can appreciate what it was like until you were there. It's something that was just staggering what you were doing. And for me, the thing that I struggle to think how you did it was waking up each day. I think if the runs you do with Coast to Cozzy and so forth, and where you go out, you start and you basically run until you stop. Where this one, you kept going to bed and then having to wake up and do it again. When you were sore, your feet looked like a drop pie, and I think that's, for me, is the thing that I still struggle to comprehend, the enormity of the feat that you undertook.
Yeah. I think, Peter, and besides my feet, I look like a drop pie most of the time, but very much it is, I had a great support crew who looked after me, and that, first of all, I made a commitment to do something, and I was going to do it. So that was very important to me. Getting up, it was a routine, getting as much sleep as I could, getting food into me, massage, clothes sorted, and again, you cannot do that without a support crew day in, day out. But again, all I was focused on was that day, and I was focused on that first 2 hours till the support crew would come and catch up again. So that was quite hard. The bikes going past would give me a lift, and I'll say every now and then I'd be slumped over, not feeling good, and Chris and Gay would go past in the van, and I'd go, oh, here come the bikes, and I'll be very upright, looking real sharp, looking good. It's funny how those things lift you, but also, I got a lot of drew energy from the bike riders, but there was also, I think it was probably, actually it was this day, and even this bit of road actually looks a bit familiar, where I was really struggling. And I think you slowed down the road and said, how you doing? And I just said, don't stop. Don't stop. And I was really struggling that day. And I think if you'd stopped, I just would have been crying for 10 to 15 minutes. It was hard. I wasn't in a good place. I wasn't feeling well. But like all things, it came to pass. I went through that patch, started feeling better, got better food into me, started looking around, enjoying things more, and I was fine. But there are times where you go, it's hard, it's hot, but nothing comes easy, you know. And same thing, we're raising money for hands, for the cause, and for the children. And well, it's hard out on a road, and it's hot. And yes, I've been running, but it's pretty hard not having any parents. You know?
Yeah.
Pretty hard not having
Greg,
knowing what your future is. So.
Yeah, Greg, we talk very much and believe very much at Hands that what we're doing is creating shared experiences, and it builds strong communities in Australia, in New Zealand, and of course in Thailand. You talk about the support crew and that you had with you, and you had your whole family there. Your daughter Hannah has ridden before, and she's now married, and the opportunity to do something like this again, you just don't know if it's going to present. What did it do for your family, having that shared experience of doing something collectively that was such an epic adventure for everyone who contributed in such a big way?
I think, Pete, you sound like you're goading me to do it again. It was just so special. And a number of people, it's interesting that people who said to me, I can't believe your family did that with you. My family wouldn't do that. I had one or two people actually say, my wife would never let me do that or would never come. You know, and to have a family that embraced it, part of that is because of the belief in the work that Hands does, number one. Secondly, you know, it's an adventure and an experience, and they get a lot out of it. You know, they also see that as you get older and as a parent, you don't just have to sit on the lounge, sit on the couch, then suburb it. You can be active and do things, but you also can do things as a family. And that is such a great experience that every now and then someone will raise a comment about something, and we'll talk about Thailand for 20 minutes as a family about the experience we had. It binds you together, like family holidays bind you together. It was like that. But I also see, as a child, they saw me at my best. They saw me as a mess. They saw me physically struggling, emotionally struggling. They saw the love, and I experienced the love of so many people, you know. Such a great thing. It's giving me goosebumps now thinking about it.
Oh, mate, it's something that, like I started this with Bridge doing the rides in 2009. I had my kids on it. Dad was driving the support vehicle. And, you know, now I've had probably since 2015, I've ridden with CT, and we both have to lead different rides on our own. And there's nothing like sharing the experience with those that mean so much. And I've done it with my dad, my brother, my kids, my parents-in-law, my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, and it becomes that unique shared experience that you have to experience to really understand. All right, we've run out of time, but there's something that before we finish, and I'll put the notes in the Facebook page, is I spoke about the growth of ultra trail running. And, you know, for me, anyone can basically go out, train and do a marathon on the road, and, you know, for 4 or 5 hours, and it's just a case of being fit enough. But ultra trail running, it's such a different thing. We're carrying the gear and learning and being out there for such a long time, and there is real growth. And thankfully, you've stepped up and started your business to support others with beyondthe42.com. And you're helping people not make the mistakes and learn from those that have gone before. And you've also agreed that you're finally going to put this down into a book and give people the opportunity to benefit from what you've done. And they don't have to be signing up, committing to 100 or 150 Ks, but for someone today who's thinking, you know, this is the audacious goal I need. This is what I need to lift me out. if they get in contact with you at Beyond the 42, you might be able to help them, yeah?
Absolutely, Peter. And I've talked a lot about the experience and the enjoyment, and it's about providing help. I'll actually help them be an ultra trail runner. I'll provide them with my skills, knowledge, and experience. Not everybody wants to podium or be a winner. It's not about that.
Yeah.
It's about helping you to succeed to your goal, and whether that is just to complete one, whether that is to do something quite significant. I'll provide that. So it's a case of meeting your needs with an absolute full package, and learning skills, notes, all the training plans, checklists, all those elements, even getting to support crew and being a pacer, providing other services around that as well, even just being available for a help consultation. That's what Beyond the 42 is about, so that people can get the clarity I've got, the understanding, can enjoy the experience. And the growth in trail running, I think, is because it's getting us back into that spirit of adventure and out there. And it's not about super fast times, because you can't always do those. So Beyond the 42 is here to help, and using my experience and the knowledge from the events I've done, I'm really keen to help share and impart that to others so they can learn and get something out of that as well.
Well, mate, you've been a great source of inspiration to me in so many things that you've done and you continue to do. And if you can help an old fellow like me take up trail running on the other side of 50, well, then it's hope there for everyone. Mate, thanks for joining us today. CT, back to you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, PB. And Greg, we love you at your best, and we love you when you're a mess. It's we just love having you part of the Hands community, and I can attest to the inspiration and just how encouraging you are when you're riding alongside each other and having a chat and helping people through some tough days. I know my first bike ride with Hands, you were integral in getting me over the finish line, and just helping me on those tougher legs and those hotter legs. So thank you, 10 years on for that. But no, you're an absolute champion, and I think it would be awesome. And congratulations on the new direction for you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Peter.
Now, I've just had, I'm just reading through the comments just quickly, and we've just had a couple of comments worth sharing with you here. And Hamish from New Zealand has said, riding past Greg 8 times and most nights, waiting for him to reach our hotels is one of my most vivid memories of that 800 kilometres. You're a huge inspiration to us mere riders. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Taz has said, I think this is one of the best chats so far. Thanks, Greg, for sharing.
Thank you.
And Renee, awesome. Thanks, Greg. So thanks, everyone. That's another 25 Ks in the bank. Well done. I was saying this morning, we are officially a third of the way through. We are 10 days in to our 30-day challenge. So congratulations. Thank you for your commitment. Thanks for hanging in there. And we'll look forward to seeing you on Zooms for the rest of the week. We've got, so tomorrow we're jumping in the chat room with everyone. So the 7 o'clock and the 12 o'clock sessions will both be different chats. So jump on in, meet some of your fellow riders, and we'll pick up the interviews again on Friday with Jess Douglas and Vince Sorrenti. Until then, thanks PB, thanks Greg, and we'll see you all again soon.
Adios, sawadee ka.
Sawadee ka.